Gerrit, thanks for joining us. Our listeners and viewers should know that Gerrit Van Woudenberg is the director of, I think, a fabulous movie, Quantum Suicide. And also, as some of you longer term fans of this podcast and my work might well know, as a science fiction author myself, I've actually delved into some of the fascinating paradoxes and characteristics of quantum mechanics. So I was always, and I'm always up for seeing how other people do it, but Jared's movie really hit the spot. And as I've said in the review that I put up a few months ago, Jared was good enough to give me an advance copy of the movie. It really, I think, plays the same kind of instruments as Primer did all those years ago. And it's a completely different story, of course, although time travel and alternate realities are related. But that in itself makes the movie immensely commendable. So let me start off by asking you this question. I
Yeah.
I noticed in your press kit that one of the, I guess it was the first question that the interview asked you is, what's quantum suicide? And you gave like about a one paragraph answer and concluded by saying there are all kinds of other incredible, strange things, but I can't go into that now. So that's what that poor interviewer. Maybe you can give our listeners and viewers a little more on that. First of all, tell everyone what quantum suicide is, but then, even in some ways more important, what are some of these fascinating nooks and crannies that you feel at 2 o'clock in the afternoon you can't understand that maybe 11 o'clock in the evening you can?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't, you don't want to like write someone, a novel when they ask you the first question. But I'm happy to get into it. And I love thinking and talking about this stuff. Um, okay. So your viewers might be aware of Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger's cat is the most famous thought experiment in quantum mechanics. In Schrodinger's cat, you have a cat in a box and you have something that can kill the cat hooked up to a quantum test. And you run the test, and the test is binary. It'll give you a yes or a no. If it's a yes, it kills the cat. If it's a no, the cat keeps living. Nothing happens. Um, so that's Schrodinger's cat. Quantum suicide is fundamentally the same experiment, but now the experimenter is the cat. You put yourself inside the experiment, and you're in the box with the thing that can kill you hooked up to the quantum experiment. And the experiment runs. It's a binary yes or no. One answer, it kills you. One answer, you keep living. But in quantum suicide, you would run the experiment over and over and over again. And the idea is if if the many worlds interpretation is correct, which is one of surprisingly one of the leading interpretations of quantum mechanics among professional physicists, this thought experiment says you will always live. As the experimenter, you'll continue to exist in the reality where you don't get killed by the experiment. Um, so what it has this idea of like quantum immortality built into it. Um, Now, we don't know if this is accurate, and the idea is it's a thought experiment. So it's not something we're supposed to try. It's just something to think about. Um, but if the quantum suicide experiment is true, like if you can run that experiment and no matter how many times you run it, with the 50-50 odds of you surviving each time, but if you run it a million times and you keep surviving, that says that many worlds is true. That says that the observer's role in the creation of reality, um, like the observer is fundamental to the way reality works. Uh, and that's a really big question in quantum mechanics. Like, what does it mean, uh right? Because there's like in quantum mechanics the idea is like everything is in superposition, uh like things exist in probabilities. It's not just this thing happens and this thing happens. It's not deterministic. but what's the mechanism that allows like all of those possibilities to become like the thing that is reality? And what role does consciousness play in it? But if quantum suicide is true, then consciousness plays like a very pivotal role in the creation of reality.
Okay. No, okay, and that's very important. So that's the key. It's the crucial necessity of consciousness. In order for consciousness to continue, the person has to be alive. A dead person is unconscious. If the scientists were killed, that would end the whole thing right there.
Yeah,
And that's why, even though on the one hand, a la Schrodinger's cat, there's a 50-50 chance that the cat will either live or die, but the cat is not the experimenter. If you're doing it with a human or any sentient experimenter who's running the experiment, since that entity set up the situation in the first place, that's why, even though this is called quantum suicide, to some extent, the better name would be quantum survival, right?
totally. Yeah. And the thing, like the other like really interesting and kind of like like you wouldn't expect this this effect. um the result is dependent on your reference frame. So if you're the experimenter inside the experiment, then you're gonna live. But for anyone outside the experiment who watches you run this experiment, they're gonna see you die.
Right.
Yeah, so reality splits based on your reference frame, like in this particular context, if these theories are true.
Yeah, that's an extremely important point, obviously, of the movie, because the poor wife is going through hell.
Yeah,
She wants her husband obviously to live. By the way, I just want to say that the many worlds interpretation is also, whether it's true or not, is also a great boon for people who love time travel and write time travel stories, because otherwise the time traveler falls prey to what's known as the grandfather paradox, and you don't have to be, so sexist about it. And in fact, it doesn't even have to be it could be a great grandparent, it could
yeah,
be a parent, anyone who is necessary for you to exist, who is killed, and you don't even have to be that violent. All you have to do is travel back in time and somehow get in the way of your grandparents' meeting for the first time, or whenever the time was when they began to see that there was really an attraction. Then one of your parents wouldn't be born, then you would cease to exist. So then how could you have traveled back in time in the first place? But I realized a long time ago that the many worlds interpretation does provide a way of getting out of that, because if Paul Levinson one travels to the past and prevents his grandparents from meeting accidentally or deliberately, yeah, that will end Paul Levinson one. But at the very instant that Paul Levinson one changed something in the past, that created a different universe. It's a universe two in which there's a PL2, and he can travel and do whatever he wants or not. So
totally. Yeah, it allows for multiple timelines
right.
to coexist, which yeah makes things potentially make more sense in a time travel narrative.
Yeah, but I mean, look, but what always bothered me, I have to say, because I'm a lot like you. That's probably one of the reasons why I love the movie. Is on the one hand, I certainly love things that make time travel more possible, but do you, in your heart and soul, really, really believe that right now, as per the many worlds interpretation, there are an infinite number of universes? I don't mean universes in the physical sense, I mean alternate
Yeah,
universes. Obviously, a universe in which you and I never met, a universe in which we met, but I stupidly didn't ask you, hey, send me a copy of the movie, a universe in which you never made the movie, a universe, you can just go on and on and on. uh, Honestly, in my heart and soul, just on using Occam's razor, that doesn't seem like a very reasonable state of existence.
The existence of parallel universes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, these are these are big, uh, existential questions that I do not know the answer to. Um, I mean, when I made this movie, when I wrote this movie, I did like I was not approaching it from the perspective that like the many world interpretation is true and what we're making in this movie is like the correct interpretation for the way reality works, but I thought it made for a really interesting narrative. Um, but I do. So I did not believe in parallel universes. I didn't believe in the multiverse when I was younger, when I was making this film. Um, I don't like have, I don't firmly believe it either way these days, but as I've gotten older and probably through the process of making this movie, uh, I'm becoming more open to the idea of the multiverse, of the existence of parallel realities. Um, I do not I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know either way how I feel. I'm probably 50-50 whether the multiverse exists or not.
yeah. Well, no, I can understand that. It's another one of these things that depends on the time of day you're thinking about it. But I think all people who love science fiction, who in any way make or contribute to science fiction, have a, apropos of Schrodinger's cat, I guess, have a fundamental duality where on the one hand, they're open to these strange possibilities
Yeah.
that have maybe some scientific legitimacy, but on the other hand, because it's science fiction, not fantasy, applying science. I don't know if you know this, by the way, but you probably do. Einstein didn't actually agree with much of quantum mechanics. He thought Niels Bohr was
Yeah.
wrong with that fundamental, right? And if you think about it, I guess I side with Einstein there. That is it really the case that the observation of a subatomic particle, not touching it, not doing anything physically to it, but the mere mental, and not sending out some kind of mental ray, but just the mere thinking about it changes that particle. Bohr came up with that as a way of solving some very, very complex problems. But how do you feel about the solution that he came up with?
I mean, I definitely like, especially coming from where Einstein was at that with our knowledge at that point in time, like quantum mechanics didn't make any sense in the early 1900s. Like I certainly, if I were Einstein, I would have believed in a like deterministic, like approach to reality, and especially with the things that he had learned about relativity. Um, but what Einstein's work paved the way for quantum mechanics to exist. And I mean, it's like kind of in Oppenheimer, you see that, right? It's like right, it's like the idea that we're standing on the shoulders of giants, but also that like there are generations of thinkers who, right, like Einstein's class, like they brought us to this next level, but then they couldn't really accept like what was built on top of that. And that's probably going to keep happening, right? Like as we keep uncovering the secrets of the universe, it's going to get crazier and crazier.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question. I mean, 100 years from now or 200 years from now, if I had to bet, and obviously it wouldn't matter to me, but I guess to my great great grandchildren or whatever, so they
Yeah.
would get the money. I think that things will move forward. Our understanding will move forward, but I think that. I mean, we're lucky as science fiction creators that we have this quantum mechanic option to put into our stories because I can't really see it lasting. But who knows? But but let's switch. I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers, and actually I am as well, are interested in the nuts and bolts of your story as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And first of all, you've said more than once that you have been thinking about this movie for how many years? 20, 30 years or
Uh, yeah, probably I found out about the quantum suicide experiment like a little over 20 years ago,
okay.
around 20 years ago.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, when I was in university. And when I first like I'm like my friend Carrie Friesen, one day at school was like, "Hey, have you guys heard about quantum suicide?" And no one had. That was the first time I had heard of it. But we started talking about it. He explained it, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's crazy! Like, what a crazy idea! That's goofy, Carrie." But I was really like, "Oh, there's narrative potential in there. Like, I'm gonna make that into a movie one day." Um, so yeah, it was 20 years ago that I got the idea for Quantum Suicide, the film. Um, but the truth is we shot this movie many years ago. Like this is an independently financed production. We didn't have like money or financial support to make the film. So we ended up spending many years in post-production, uh trying to get it finished, trying to get it made without having the financial backing that most films have. So really, this was a labor of love, and it was a long time coming.
So it must be immensely gratifying, though. You know, one of the great advantages of just being a writer is it doesn't cost you anything to write. You
Yeah.
might get frustrated in terms of finding the publisher that you want. You know, you might have to go, cursing and moaning and, hey, I'm going to just put this out on Amazon myself. But none of that costs you any money. Uh, but actually, I'm glad you did mention that there was a lot of this was actually shot years ago, because I was wondering when I read about the fact that it cost so much money that you had to pour into this. But correct me if I'm wrong. Nowadays, isn't it much less expensive to make a good-looking feature film than it was even 10 years ago? Or is that just nonsense that the media tells us?
I mean, like with the cameras they put in cell phones these days, like anyone, you can go and shoot something in 4K that like looks pretty good with your camera phone. Um, for us, production was actually really cheap because we were young, we were out of film school. We did everything like, we like bootstrapped the whole thing. We did it as cheap as we possibly could. Um, so our production like was cheap as well. Uh, but the post production, like it was like, like I went to film school, and I had my crew of people I knew from film school. Um, and we had a lot of skills covered. So we could, for virtually free, like we can shoot a movie, we can do the picture edit on a movie. But then once we got to the things that we couldn't do, suddenly it's like, well, how do we get like a Hollywood level of sound design and that level of music, and how do we get these visual effects done? And the stuff that we couldn't do, that we had to find people to do, and we had to pay them, like that's when it started taking a long time. So one of the big costs, yeah, was the post-production on this film. And the other thing that I've learned making this film, um, is like, even when the movie was done, when I had a thing that I could send you a file and you could watch our film, we were only halfway through the cost of releasing a film. Just doing all the legal work and getting all the clearances, and like applying to film festivals and getting all the legal pieces in order to release a film. That's actually quite onerous. Like that was surprising to me how much money you have to put in to get it kind of like legally ready to be a thing that can get released into the world. And I realized that that's kind of a fixed cost. Like even if you make a movie for $1,000 or $5,000, you're still, if you want to release that on Amazon, like you're gonna have to spend a lot of money getting all your ducks in a row. And that's a cost you can't really get around, no matter how cheap you produced your film for.
Yeah, I remember with the chronology protection case, which is on Amazon. It's about 48 minutes.
Yeah,
The same sort of thing happened. Jay Kensinger and Jay made the movie. I wrote the story it's based on. I
yeah.
contributed a little to the movie, but it's a short. But suddenly, Amazon is the one that says it has to be exactly like this. This has to change. It has to be exactly like that, and that can be onerous. But on the other hand, if you think about it, getting it on Amazon is an extraordinary thing. I mean, you can't get much better these days. What would be better than Amazon? Maybe Netflix. I don't know if I haven't checked recently. Amazon might even be bigger than Netflix now. Certainly, it's bigger than Apple TV Plus, which seems to have a good corner on science fiction movies and also television series. So yeah, that's okay. So I get that. That's, where the expense would be. And I assume the expense is much greater with a feature film than a short film because that's always the way it is. But I'm sure that's not going to stop you from working on other projects. So here are a couple of questions, or actually just one question. You can take
Yeah.
whatever direction you want. First of all, I'm like a sequel lunatic. Just about everything I see, I'm always thinking, well, there could be a sequel. And, I don't know, there's like a part of me never wants any story to end. And
Yeah.
usually, even though there can be a sequel, usually there's not a sequel. So one question would be, have you thought about making a sequel? I mean, there's room for a sequel, the hero's daughter, what's going to be happening with her, even as time goes on, or are you working on just other completely different projects?
Yeah, so I mean I will start by saying there is certainly not going to be a sequel to Quantum Suicide. I can guarantee that. One of the things that came up in our contract negotiations and everything is the sequel rights. So I do have the sequel rights. So I can definitively say I'm not making a sequel. Um my there's two screenplays I'm working on right now. Um so I made Quantum Suicide, which is a film about quantum mechanics. The film that I'm writing right now that I'm so excited about is a time travel story, and that's what I want to direct. So I hope to make that next, to make that soon. And then the third film that I'm working on, the third screenplay, is like it's pretty like epic, like space opera sci-fi, uh, but it has some really like that, like those indie storytelling, like twists and reversals, and it all has to do with relativity. It's a film about relativity that no one's no one's like nothing. I mean, I love science fiction. Like I watch all the sci-fi that I can find, and I don't think that people have really dug into what's possible with relativity. I mean, there's some like time dilation and you go off and you fly fast and then like you age at different speeds, but I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in there that yeah hasn't been explored to its full potential yet. So so my answer is like I'm not making a sequel by any means, but I think there's kind of a like a like it what's it, like it's a trilogy. It's what's that called? Like they're not directly correlated, but this idea of a film about quantum mechanics, a film about time travel, a film about relativity. It's a spiritual trilogy.
Well, I think that's a great idea, actually. It is a spiritual trilogy because they're all sort of related. They're not just totally distant topics. The third thing that you're thinking of doing is not a piece about altering the DNA and turning us into different beings, which is another, legitimate kind of science fiction.
Yeah.
It sort of has a kinship with alternate realities and time travel. Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
maybe it's a physics trilogy.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Definitely a physics trilogy. And I think there are very few people doing that. And I think, you have, I think the, uh, to me, the greatest alternate history story is, completely different from quantum suicide and what we've been talking about. It's The Man in the High Castle, and it's not even a movie; it's a series, and
Yeah.
it's a flawed series. I think it ended in a ridiculous way, and all kinds of other things. But it would be hard to equal that. And my favorite time travel movie is probably 12 Monkeys, but there is room there for easily room there for another great time travel story and movie. There've been a lot of attempts at excellent time travel movies. One of the problems, which I know that you are not going to ignore, is too many time travel movies and stories forget about the grandfather paradox completely. They just write as if there's no problem. You know, somebody travels to the past, they bump into all kinds of people, they come back to the present. Unless the
Yeah.
movie is explicitly about that, traveling to the past is no different than taking a trip to Chile or Australia in our world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like pretty fundamentalist about the use of science in story. And like, I want things to be internally coherent. It's like, if it's not coherent, if it doesn't like, hold together, yeah, I just start questioning the whole story. So that's something that is really important to me. Yeah, any story, especially a time travel story, like it has to be an internally coherent, like consistent, like rubric for how these physical laws work. Yeah, and I do not plan on ignoring that. Like I want to make I want to make films that make sense, that like hold together scientifically.
How many years you think it's going to be before we'll be able to see that time travel movie? If you had to just give a rough estimate.
I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen now. I mean, I think I have some opportunities, with this film coming out and like a little bit of exposure. Uh, so yeah, so I think we'll be able to get some, to get the financing to do it properly. But yeah, my idea is like I'm gonna write this film. Uh, if we can get the funding to do it right, then I'm going to make this movie next. That's the next thing I'm going to do with my life. But if we don't get the financing for it, I'm not going to make another movie like Quantum Suicide. Like I'm not going to do it where I finance it myself and it's a labor of love that takes forever. Uh, so I think either like it's kind of a binary. Like either this film is going to be out in 2 or 3 years, or I'm not going to make this film and it's just going to be a screenplay.
I think you'll wind up making the film. You know, I used to be president of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, SIFWA. That back then it was just called the
Cool.
Science Fiction Writers of America. Now it's called, I think, the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. And we had a fundamental principle, which I strongly agreed with and still do agree with, that money should flow only one way in everything that writers at least do, meaning they should flow from some outside source, you know, a publisher, a box office of a theater, whatever you want to say, even an agent, and those places should be earning money for you, and then they give you money after deducting what their percentage is. But
Yeah.
but your feelings you don't want to spend any more of your own money is really very consistent with that, because once you get into spending your own money, you wind up buying all kinds of things that somebody else should be paying for. So your instinct is right. You want to get the funding from someplace else, from
Yeah.
people who believe in the movie, or maybe. I mean, would you be open to, in effect, and I don't know enough about movies, so I might not know what I'm talking about, but assuming that big studios and even smaller studios now take on projects from independent producers, and they hire that producer, and you work out a contract with them, and then that's how these movies get made.
Yeah, like that's my plan, right? It's like this was independently financed. And like I'm very happy to have done that once to have gotten this created, but I'm not going to do that again. Like the next film I'm going to make is going to be inside the studio system. Or I'm not going to do it at all.
Because it was too painful for you to go through this, spending your own money, or a significant other told you
Uh,
no.
like it's not that it's painful, but it take like it takes too long. It takes too much. It takes too much of you to be like the right, like the financial force behind it and the creative force and the producing force. Like I'm not going to take on another project that's like like a life project like that. And then there were so many things where like it took so long because we didn't have the financing in place. No, I want to if I'm gonna do it again, I'm gonna do it, the right way, and have the pieces in place beforehand, and then be able to work quickly and just focus on the creative and the artistic side of it.
That makes perfect sense. And of
Yeah.
course, the better that quantum suicide does, the more of an entree you'll have to these bigger professional studios. So what are you doing as far as promotion of the movie now? Because that's something else that a lot of my listeners and viewers are always interested in. Okay, you're lucky enough, you were able finally to get this movie out there, and it could be a book, it could be a play, whatever it is. It could be a record, a
Yeah.
recording. All right, that's great. And by the way, there are some, in my opinion, idiots in the academic world, and I'm a professor, in addition,
Yeah.
being a writer and all that stuff, who unbelievably think their job is to write the book. And then they'll leave it to the publisher to promote the book. And they somehow think they're almost prostituting themselves if a publisher calls upon them. Could you travel to Kansas City? We have this bookstore that would like to put on an event. No, I'm teaching a course. I can't. I know people who act like that. But obviously, I'm not that kind of professor. Uh,
Yeah.
but the the promotion, I think, of anything, whether it's a book or a movie, is really part of the process of creation, right? I mean, you create something not so it's in a closet so nobody else sees it. You create something with the goal that it's going to be out there to the world. So what are you doing as far as the promotion, of the
Yeah.
movie to make that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, I want to second your point that it's a really like it's a part of the process to bring it into the world. And I actually like I found I've really enjoyed going to film festivals and traveling to film festivals and getting to show your work and discuss your work in with people and in the media and online. Um, it's yeah, it's like the second phase of creation. Like you have to make it and then you have to bring it into the world. And it's been really gratifying to get to do that second half of it. Um, but we've been playing film festivals for the past year. We played film festivals, all over the world, which was an amazing experience. And then we got a sales agent, we got a distributor. So now the film is coming out on October 18 on Friday.
Right.
So now, yeah, the film's coming out. We have our distributor. Uh, the the publicity that we're doing is, I mean, it's like there's a lot of different verticals that we're approaching. But there's social media is like a pillar of it. Um, we have publicists who are done an amazing job at Shinehouse. So that's like traditional PR. And they're, putting out press releases and getting reviews, and that's like all the mainstream press getting us into the hands of MSN and IGN and the whole like that whole like media beast. Um, and then outside of that, I'm doing podcasts. We're getting reviews. Um, what else are we doing? So now as a filmmaker, Letterboxed is a like a film kind of a film review social network website, and it's pretty like I mean it's like 10 years old, but now it's like it's suddenly come to the fore like this. It's taken over Rotten Tomatoes, and it's really active, and it's a really amazing community. Like I really love Letterboxd now that I've learned about it and gotten into it. So I'm really trying to be active there, and we're publishing exclusive content there, and I'm really loving being a part of Letterboxd. um yeah, I think I think that's it. And inside social media, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, we're posting on like Facebook groups, so trying to find, kind of like relevant niches and people who are really into like sci-fi and genre films and letting them know about it. Um, yeah, and we're managing our traditional, like our Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Um, yeah, I have a TikTok account, which is a new thing for me. But yeah, the production company has a TikTok account, and we're making TikTok reels, which is a totally different style of video and editing. Um, but I mean, and even like the format, right? Because it goes on your phone, it's like the vertical instead of the horizontal, which is kind of anathema to me as a filmmaker. But like you learn these new media forms, and there's a lot of there's potential there, and it's interesting learning the new rules. But yeah, also TikTok, so we're doing a bunch of stuff in social media. I have it on my list to start posting on Reddit, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Well, you should do Reddit. Reddit can be enormously helpful. There are a lot of
Yeah,
very energetic people there. I'm with you on TikTok, by the way. I'm working away at like basically beginning to understand a little of it, but I still don't quite get it. One thing, though, as a professor, that I'm talking my head off about is I think, and you're a Canadian, so it's not in any way your country's fault. Our brilliant Congress and current President Biden, who I in general like, not to
yeah,
get off on a political discussion, thought it was a great idea to pass. The Congress passed it, and Biden signed it into law that a couple of months into 2025, if China is not divested of TikTok, meaning TikTok, they have to agree to spin TikTok off, and China's
yeah.
not going to do that. It's going to be banned in the United States. And one of the things I'm currently teaching a course, actually, I was saying one of the things I talk about called freedom of expression. This is a blatant violation of our First Amendment. And a lot of people who don't get how that works, the First Amendment, say, well, what do you mean? China's not entitled to First Amendment protection. Right. But Americans who want to use a Chinese system, they are entitled to choose
Yeah.
to. And so, um, good for you for wanting to use TikTok. You know,
Yeah, and I mean, and like I've learned kind of through this process, right, of bringing our film into the world, is how big the influencer economy actually is, right? And the number of people where that's their primary source of income, that's their profession, and a lot of people do it really well, and I'm sure there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans who are relying on that as their primary source of income.
that's right.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, well, this is something I was suspicious and would have been suspicious about this idea of banning TikTok in the first place, if only because there's something wrong with something that both Republicans and Democrats both enthusiastically support in this country, because the
yeah.
two parties, are such different positions in terms of freedom of expression and so forth. Let's talk a tiny bit about the actors. Now, there are three unknown actors in who are, primarily in that in the fascinating labyrinth of a movie that Quantum Suicide is. What are they up to? What are they doing? Are you doing anything more with them? Are they working out there promoting the movie? Are they doing other things?
So yeah, there are three like main actors in the film. Um, so Andrew Rogerson and Kate Totten are both, yeah, relatively unknown actors. Kennedy Montana, who's the little girl, she actually, like, when we shot this film, she was a big actor. She was a childhood actor. She was in the one with Jet Li. She was by far the most, like, the biggest name involved in the film. Um, but yeah, since we've shot this film, so Kate has retired from acting, and I mean, I think she's lived an amazing life and done some really cool stuff professionally, and now she's raising her family. Um, and Andrew Rogerson has recently he's working in the film industry, he's working in props, and he's writing. Um, But he has a film that like a short that came out last year as well. So he's kind of getting back into acting. But really he's like, we're gonna make more movies. He wants to be a writer producer, and he's a great writer. He loves films and filmmaking. Um, and Kennedy has lived like a whole life since we shot this film. Um,
She's a grandmother now, right?
well, it actually is astounding the life that she's lived. Um, but she has like we've kept in touch with her, and especially Shane Morgan, our producer, and Andrew Rogerson, the lead, have been like really tight with Kennedy and with her mom Judy. Um, but Shane used to shoot the fashion shows in Vancouver. So Shane had Kennedy at a fashion show as a guest, and she got headhunted. She got I don't know what that's called exactly. I think headhunted is the wrong word, but she got like picked up by a modeling agency, and she became a model. And she became an influencer, and now she's going to law school.
Hmm, that's
Uh,
great.
yeah, she's lived a whole life, and she wants to be an entertainment lawyer, and she really knows, the inside of the business quite well,
That's
because of
a
all her life experience.
I love that. That's a wonderful story. It really
Yeah,
is. I mean, a wonderful, true story. Uh,
yeah,
and no doubt being in your movie is one of the things that it must have been extremely exciting to her. I mean, she was already a success, but still, it's always good to be in yet another feature film and in a such
yeah.
a high intellect movie like this. By the way, I'm not sure if I ever mentioned this to you. One of the things that attracted me to Quantum Suicide is that Andrew looks a lot like Jay Kensinger. If you look for pictures,
I'm not aware. Who is Jay Kensinger?
Jay Kensinger is. I'll just very briefly tell you
Yeah,
this. My viewers and listeners have heard this 1,000 times. So I wrote a novelette, The Chronology Protection Case. It was nominated for a whole bunch of awards, didn't win anything. It was reprinted half a dozen times. That was back in 1995. It was published in Analog Magazine. And I remember this as clear as day. One day in February 2002, I get a package at Fordham University, and basically there's this letter, this heartfelt letter saying, in effect, please don't sue me. And it's a letter from Jim Kensinger that he made without getting my permission, a short movie based on my novelette. And he tell and this letter, I still have it. I love it. He tells about running into Greg Bear, unfortunately now the late Greg Bear, a great science fiction author, at some kind of convention. They're both in San Francisco, and Jay goes up to Greg and says, can I ask your advice about something? And Greg says, sure, what's the problem? And he
yeah,
explains, made this movie based on Paul Levinson's story, and I didn't ask his permission. What should I do? I'm afraid he's going to sue me. And Greg Bear correctly says, "You don't know Paul Levinson. He's going to be nothing but thrilled."
yeah. I would like that's what I was gonna say. It's like that's
Yeah,
really probably the best person you could.
that's right. So you can see the movie on Amazon there, and basically you'll see the character, Jay Kensinger. He doesn't look exactly, check it out, but
Yeah,
there's something about these young guys in like time travel or physics stories that a lot of them look somewhat similar. I don't know why
I'm
that.
pulling up some images of him. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah,
So and he has like the same approach to things. I mean, that was a crazy story anyway, because the story takes place in New York City, but with a vengeance. It's a quintessential New York City story. And Jay had no money. He couldn't come to New York and shoot it. So he shot it in San Francisco and try to like bend the New York parts of the story into San Francisco. And it worked to some extent. But
cool.
anyway, um, well, I think what you have some great stories right there in terms of what the three protagonist actors are doing now that the movie has come out. Any final things that you want to let the world know through this podcast about the movie, about about what you're going to be doing? You pretty much told us what you're going to be doing, but
I mean, okay, I will share where people will be able to watch the film. Um, so coming out Friday, October 18, you can stream it on Tubi and Plex. You can rent it on Amazon, on Fandango at Home, on Verizon Fios, and on a bunch of cable providers across the states.
all
So that's
right.
how you can catch Quantum Suicide. If you watch the film and you liked it, you want to support it, we'd really appreciate reviews on Letterboxd, on IMDb, on Rotten Tomatoes.
All right, great. Well, I'm sure you're going to get many, and I predict, and I don't just make these predictions off the cuff. I think this movie is going to become, at the very least, a cult classic, because again, as we've been discussing and we were talking at the beginning, it addresses some very, very profound issues in a very almost charming way, precisely because it's low key and like it zooms into just this family living in this house and what's going on in that house. And so I think all the work that you put into it, I think paid off beautifully. And I'm looking forward to seeing this movie reviewed all over the world, and with the same kind of review that I gave it, which I said I thought it was a great movie.
Yeah, I got a review from Film Threat that came in 5 minutes before this interview started, and it is a lot like your review, and it starts with the primer comparison, and yeah, it reminded me of what you wrote as well. But yeah, no, I really appreciate your kind words, and I'm starting to think that maybe that is that's the trajectory that we're going to be on because we're getting really great feedback. Yeah, it's all going great.
Yeah, I mean, connecting it to Primer is important because Primer's in a class by itself. There's been no other
Yeah.
movie, in the time travel genre remotely like Primer. And your movie, again, is in a related topic, but not on the same topic. And, apropos of what you were saying about sort of spiritual trilogies, here there's like a clear spiritual duality between Primer and Quantum Suicide. All right. Well, listen, I hope to continue this podcast and keep annoying people for as many more years as possible. So, here's an invitation to come back whenever you get your next project going, and by then we'll see what a big hit Quantum Suicide was, and we'll be able to discuss and the fact that it's a time travel story. We'll be able to discuss something that's even more enjoyable, at least time travel versus alternate history, slightly more enjoyable to me than alternate history. But since time travel is my number one and alternate history is a close second, it's really a slight difference.
Totally. Yeah, no, I look forward to coming back on the podcast, and I'm sure I'll keep connecting with you along the way.
Great. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye, Paul.
Bye bye.